The Chinese yuan has just become one of the 5 most widely used currencies in global payment according to SWIFT, the Society of Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. This marks an important milestone as the Chinese currency is playing a growing role in international payments. The Chinese government has been encouraging the use of the yuan abroad by easing its control over the exchange rate, which is controlled by China's central bank. This has helped the yuan in being recognized as a major global currency. So which currencies did the Chinese yuan just pass, and which are still ahead? Here are Tent's top 10 currencies in world payment. The Singapore dollar has been the official currency of Singapore since 1967, 2 years after it became independent from Malaysia, and is issued by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS. The current series of currency notes was introduced in 1999, and on the front they feature the face of Yusof bin Ishak, the first president of the Republic of Singapore, while on the back the notes depict civic virtues such as education, garden city, sports, arts, youth, government, and economics. The polymer version is progressively replacing the paper version due to its numerous advantages. These include better security features, durability, waterproofing, reduced environmental impact, and cheaper production. But perhaps the most interesting fact about the Singapore dollar is its S10,000 note. This makes it the world's most valuable of all banknotes in circulation. But these are becoming very rare, as the MAS has decided in 2014 to stop printing them and withdrawing them from circulation in an attempt to fight money laundering. The Hong Kong dollar is the official currency of Hong Kong. Its issuance is governed by the Monetary Authority of Hong Kong, which licensed 3 commercial banks to issue their own banknotes for circulation. This arrangement is somewhat comparable to the system used in the United Kingdom. Having 3 different banks issue notes means that the designs for the same denominations differ depending on which bank issued them. HSBC notes will depict a lion, the Bank of China depicts the Bank of China Tower, and the Standard Chartered Bank uses images with the themes of technology and heritage. Since 1983, the Hong Kong dollar has been pegged to the US dollar. Today, the peg has a lowered guaranteed limit of 7.85 to the dollar and an upward guaranteed limit at 7.75. Although the recent announcement of Switzerland abandoning its currency peg to the euro has investors wondering whether the Hong Kong dollar could be the next peg to fall. The Swiss franc has been the official currency of Switzerland since 1850, and the currency of Liechtenstein since 1920. The Swiss franc is considered a safe haven currency because of the country's political and fiscal stability. The current note depicts famous Swiss artists and displays all information in the 4 national languages. A new series of notes is expected to be issued in 2016. As mentioned earlier, the Swiss franc was pegged to the euro by the Swiss National Bank (SNB) back in September of 2011. As the strength of the Swiss franc was starting to hurt Swiss exporters. But on January 15, 2015, the SNB surprisingly removed the ceiling, anticipating a further decline of the euro currency, meaning that the peg was becoming too costly for Switzerland. This resulted in the Swiss franc increasing its value over the euro by 30% instantly. Some benefited greatly from this announcement, but others, like the company The Swatch Group, which relies heavily on exports, saw its shares lose 15% of the value overnight. Since this decision, the Swiss National Bank's credibility, and by extension the credibility of central banks in general, has been questioned by some in the media. The Australian dollar is the official currency of the Commonwealth of Australia. This includes Christmas Island, Cocos Island, Norfolk Island, Kiribati, Nauru, and Tuvalu. It officially replaced the Australian pound in 1966 and was pegged to the US dollar until 1983 when it became a floated currency. The current series of banknotes was introduced in 1992, and they depict historical figures like Queen Elizabeth II, Sir Henry Parkes, father of the Australian Federation, David Unaipon, an Indigenous Australian preacher, inventor, and writer of the Ngarrindjeri, but also Australian writers, singers, inventors, military commanders, politicians, and journalists. Australia is the first country to fully transition from paper banknotes to polymer ones. Note Printing Australia, which is a subsidiary of the Reserve Bank of Australia, introduced the polymer banknote technology back in 1988. And aside from printing Australian dollars, it now also prints polymer notes for a growing list of other countries. The Canadian dollar has been the official currency of Canada since 1858, and is often nicknamed the loonie, after the bird pictured on the $1 coin. It is a popular currency with central banks because of Canada's stable political and legal system, and the soundness of its economy. In 2011, Canada adopted polymer technology for its banknotes, which feature, along with a maple leaf, a historical building, an image depicting Canada's contribution to the world, and prominent politicians such as Sir Alexander MacDonald, Canada's first Prime Minister, Wilfrid Laurier, one of the country's greatest statesmen, and of course the Queen of England. As a fun fact, in 2012, Iceland considered for a brief moment adopting the Canadian dollar to replace its currency, which had been losing value since the 2008 financial crisis. Ultimately, they decided against this. The yuan is known internationally as the Chinese currency, but it actually represents the primary unit of the official currency of the Republic of China, which is the renminbi. In Chinese, this literally means the people's currency. The distinction between the yuan and the renminbi is similar to that between the sterling, the British currency, and the pound, its primary unit. In 1889, the yuan began to replace the copper cash and various silver ingots called saises. Banknotes were issued in yuan denominations by several local and private banks, along with the Imperial Bank of China. Even after the revolution, a great many local, national, and foreign banks issued currency, which created hyperinflation leading up to and after the Second World War. As the communist forces took control of most of China, they introduced the new currency, initially in banknote form only and denominated in yuan. This became the sole currency of mainland China at the end of the Civil War. Today's renminbi yuan was introduced in 1955 at a rate of 10,000 old yuan to 1 new yuan, and until 2005 was pegged to the US dollar. With China's growing domestic and global economy, there's been a growth in the usage of renminbi as a reserve currency. Current banknotes feature on the obverse, Mao Zedong, and on the reverse, famous Chinese landmarks. The yen is Japan's official currency and one of the most traded currencies in the foreign exchange market. It has been regulated by the Bank of Japan since World War II. In the 19th century, Chinese and Spanish, and later South American traders introduced the silver manila galleon coins into Southeast Asia. These coins garner the name round, which translated to yen in Japanese. The Japanese coinage of the same name was officially adopted by the Meiji government in 1871, and it replaced the Tokugawa coinage, a complex monetary system of the Edo period. The yen passed through multiple standards, starting with a bimetallic standard of gold and silver until 1931. This was followed by a brief fiat model, then a fixed-rate post-war Bretton Woods system from 1949 to 1971. And was finally allowed to float in 1973. Floating allowed major world currencies to respond to market mechanisms of the foreign exchange market. In that vein, if you're in a scientific mood, the 1 yen coin is made out of 100% aluminum and can float on water if placed correctly. Current banknotes feature the portraits of a bacteriologist and 2 authors, including Fukazawa Yukichi, one of the founding fathers of modern Japan. On a final note, today's yen has seen the trend of depreciation reverse since the global economic crisis of 2008. Most major currencies, except the Swiss franc, have been declining relative to the yen. The pound sterling, or more commonly referred to as the pound, is the world's oldest active currency. Historically, the pound was a unit of account in Anglo-Saxon England, around 757 to 796 AD during the reign of King Offa of Mercia, and equal to 240 silver pennies and equivalent to 1 pound weight of silver. Hence the term pound. It saw its way through the reign of King Henry II, and even through the United Kingdom's colonial period, where it circulated alongside native currencies. Today it's the official currency of the United Kingdom, which despite having joined the European Union, decided to keep its own currency. It is also the currency of several affiliated countries and territories. Along with the US dollar, the euro, and the yen, the pound forms a basket of currencies which calculate the value of the International Monetary Fund's special drawing rights. These rights are claims to foreign exchange reserve assets which can be exchanged in the currencies mentioned, and represent the unit of account for the IMF. The issuances of banknotes in the British Islands is a bit unusual in that it isn't handled exclusively by a central bank or government. Instead, 7 retail banks, in addition to the Bank of England, have the right to print their own banknotes, each with their own designs and portraits. As a fun fact, the Bank of England produces notes worth £1 million, also called giants. The others, worth £100 million, are called titans, but they are only used within the banking system and therefore not in circulation. The euro was introduced in 1999 with physical distribution in 2002. The use of the euro removed the cost of exchanging currencies and facilitated member state commerce and economic interdependence. Currently, it is the official currency of the Eurozone, 19 members of the European Union, and 6 non-EU states. It is used by 334 million Europeans daily and another 210 million people worldwide through pegged currencies. Current banknotes illustrate relevant architectural styles of bridges, arches, and gateways, and they are redesigned every 7 to 8 years to include newer member states. An example of that is the inclusion of the Bulgarian Cyrillic alphabet on the new series of notes in addition to the Latin and Greek alphabets as a result of Bulgaria joining the Union. The European Central Bank, based in Frankfurt, along with the Euro system, central banks of Eurozone countries, are responsible for setting the Euro's monetary policy. In 2009, the multi-country currency faced the European sovereign debt crisis, and and continued to struggle in 2012 with the Greek debt and Spanish banking sector troubles. Despite these struggles and the continued policy disagreements between the French and German governments, the euro is the second largest reserve currency and the second most traded currency in the world after the US dollar. As of August 2014, with more than 995 billion euros in circulation, it has the highest combined value of banknotes and coins in circulation in the world. The US dollar is the world's most common currency for international transactions and reserves. First issued in 1792, the dollar was created by the US Constitution and defined by the Coinage Act. Although the faces of the Founding Fathers and former presidents on dollar bills have become familiar to us, this practice was actually compared to that of European monarchs by the early leaders who were against it. Adding portraits on dollars only started at the beginning of the 20th century. Current banknotes, also known as Federal Reserve notes, are issued by the Federal Reserve Bank. And what began as a commodity-based currency in the 1790s at 371.25 grains of silver, transitioned in 1971 under Nixon to today's fiat money-based system, or money whose value is derived from government regulation and law. Because of the recent global economic crisis, the US dollar is seen as a more stable reserve currency, and its presence as a global reserve increased by about 2%, totaling around 87% as of 2013. Its market strength can also be seen in many countries where it's the official currency: East Timor, Ecuador, El Salvador, Marshall Islands, federal states of Micronesia, Palau and Panama, and Zimbabwe, and a de facto currency for many more. This dominance has allowed the US government, as well as Americans, to borrow at lower costs, granting them an advantage in excess of $100 billion per year. The yuan is currently not included in the International Monetary Fund currency basket, but the news of its ascendance on the list may soon change that. Just a couple of years ago, the yuan was ranked 13 on the list. It's now at number 5. How much higher will the yuan go, and can it perhaps one day achieve the same status as the dollar or the euro? Give us your thoughts by leaving a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Peace.